Hey, everybody, this is a special edition of Exit Philosophy. I thought that Game 3 warranted its own special recording and explanation and opinion. And so here it is, my thoughts on what was an epic Game 3 of the World Series. And for those fans who may be angsting or anxious about the result, about the Jays trailing 2-1 in the series, just realize that after three games of any series, there will be a team trailing 2-1 in the series or 0-3, but this 2-1 doesn't mean that the series is over. So I think fans need to sit back and enjoy what they saw. If they saw every pitch like I did last night and stayed up till the bitter end, it was a tremendous spectacle, a tremendous sporting event. And just know that down the road, you're going to remember that series game, that World Series moment. And here's my view on it. I think the elephant in the room that everyone's talking about is John Schneider and his decision making as manager. I got no problem with the base running on Isaiah Kiner-Falefa being thrown out at third on the ball off Freddie Freeman's glove. It was an aggressive play. It was a great play by Edman, sliding on the grass, picking it up. It had to be perfect. Got no problem with that. Davis Schneider at home, once the relay was perfect to Edman, I think that he should have been held up at third base. It was an aggressive play, but a good throw by Edman at that point was going to get the out at the plate, and it did. And the appeal on a block or being safe was futile. I mean, it was obvious on the first view that he had the ball before he blocked the plate, Will Smith, and that there was nothing wrong with the play. So I would have held the runner at third base at that situation. And I know with Vlad coming up, they were going to walk him intentionally to get to Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. But the fact is that that's not a bad thing. You get to IKF, you don't know what he's going to do, what's going to happen. And the more times you can spin through your batting order in a game like that, the better off you are. He had to make a perfect throw, and he did. God bless him. But I still would have held a runner in that situation. One that is a serious question about Schneider's strategy is that he had all five subs in the game, all five of his bench players in the game by the 12th inning. And I can see Ty France coming in for the injured George Springer. There's nothing he could do about that. It can't be helped. But Schneider running for France at first base with 2 out in the 10th was not worth it. He was your last position bench player other than Tyler Heineman. And I think that one of the mistakes, or the big mistake in terms of utilizing his 14 position players, is that in the regular season, which is most of the extra inning games that Schneider has managed, there's a ghost runner. And those games don't go beyond 10 or 11 innings most times. So you can use up your bench. You can use your bench players. You can bring in your defenders like he likes to do. You can bring in your pinch runners, even though it's a slight difference in terms of the ability to add to first to third, second to home, that sort of thing. Or in the Schneider case, first to home, which if it was Ty France running, he would have stopped at third. There's no doubt about that. So maybe that worked against his strategy in that case. But with only Davis and Heineman left on the bench in the 12th, that was not a good situation, because that totally put Dave Roberts in charge of the strategy the rest of the game when there's no one else, especially when Heineman came in to run for Alejandro Kirk. And the reason, I mean, it looked like Kirk might have been hurt a little on one of the swings, and so it may work a little bit for the Blue Jays in Game 4, because Will Smith had to catch all 18 innings, and Alejandro Kirk, if he can strap it on, will be fresher than Smith in that situation. So it may work out, but they definitely need to even the series at 2-2, make sure that it's going home to Toronto, because once they get to game 6 and 7, they did it against Seattle. That's the way they'll have to think going into game 4. When Isaiah Kiner-Falefa ran in the bottom of the 7th, after the go-ahead RBI, that was, again, to bring in a defender, and also because Bo can't run. And that brings up the strategy. I think pre-World Series, I thought that Bo coming off the bench and you being able to choose the moment that he comes in to hit with his dangerous approach, his ability to drive the ball to all fields, his ability with runners in scoring position. My belief was that it was more important in the second half of a game to bring him in with his abilities and choose the situation in which to hit than to start him at second base, realize that he's wearing down because he hasn't played in a while, and then pinch run for him when he gets on base. And then all of a sudden you don't have him the rest of the game. And in this case, the rest of the game was 11 innings. So when you think about it, the 5 bench players were a combined 2 for 17 by the end of the game. So that was not a good thing. Straw ran for Barger in the 8th. I've never understood Straw running for Barger, and it was in a 5-5 tie. You're not putting in a defensive player at that point when the possibility is that the game will go a few extra innings, quite a few extra innings, and Barger may get 1 or 2 more at bats, which it turns out he would have had 4 more at bats. So, well, there's just things like that. Maybe inexperience on Schneider, maybe poor decision-making. But in all cases, it was not a shining moment, a shining game on the resume of John Schneider as a manager. In terms of pitching, Bassett pitched the 8th, and obviously with 8 pitches could have stayed in. But I think that John Schneider didn't want to be seen as Buck Showalter with his closer still in the bullpen, with Jeff Hoffman still in the bullpen as the Dodgers walk it off, if that had been the case with Bassett in there in the 9th. So 8 pitches for Bassett, and then the 9th and 10th, nice work by Jeff Hoffman. But in a way, there's a silver lining to this, because Bassett now, I believe, would be available for a bulk role after Shane Bieber, because the bullpen is gas. The rest of the bullpen is gas. So if you go Bieber and then Bassett, then you can figure out if they can carry it through 7 combined, then you can figure out the 8th and 9th. And it may even be Bassett going a little bit longer, because he's looked tremendous in a relief role. Little last man standing, shouldn't have been in that situation, especially after the failure earlier in the postseason. And my belief is that Blue Jay fans will never see Little pitch in a Blue Jays uniform again. I don't think they'll use him the rest of the series, and somehow in the offseason, they will have a chance to make a trade or do whatever they have to do. But he's lost the confidence of the manager, the pitching coach, his teammates. So I think that might be it for Brendan Little. Blue Jays pitchers threw 297 pitches in the game. 218 of those were by relievers. Fluharty allowed an inherited runner and then 1 of his own runs. But the pen overall was 3 runs allowed in 12 2/3 innings, including heroic effort by Eric Lauer, the forgotten man who had such a tremendous middle of the season, and in fact was the savior of the starting rotation until they were able to piece it together later in the year, and he was sent to the bullpen. All of this reminds me, and you think of how long the game went, over 6 hours. But it's not the longest game I've ever been at with involving the Dodgers. The Expos and the Dodgers played at Olympic Stadium on August 23rd, 1989. It was a 1-0 Dodgers win. Rick Dempsey in the 22nd inning against Dennis Martinez, hit a solo homer into the left field stands at Olympic Stadium. And that was the game that Yuppie got tossed out by the umpires because Tommy Lasorda, who's a bit of an ass, didn't like the fact that he was dancing on top of the dugout, ejected the mascot, and that's the only part of the game that ever gets shown over and over on MLB Network or wherever you get your YouTube highlights. And hopefully you're watching Exit Philosophy as part of your YouTube highlights. But I remember the 21st inning of that game. Joe Hesketh, lean left-hander, young guy from Lackawanna, New York, was asked to pitch in the 21st inning, and he said that he was a little sore and he couldn't pitch. So Dennis Martinez, much as Yoshi Yamamoto did last night, volunteered to get up and to pitch, to appear in the game. Yamamoto never had to because the game ended in the 18th. Dennis Martinez, who had started 2 days earlier, came in and he had to go find his spikes because he had his turf shoes on, got his spikes, and he put them on, and he pitched the 21st shutout and gave up a home run to Rick Dempsey. So he could be forgiven for that. But the part of the story that sticks out to me is the next day, the Expos were traveling to the West Coast for a series in San Diego, LA. So it was a California series. San Diego, LA, San Francisco, flying out of Dorval Airport. And Hesketh showed up in a cab, went to get his bags out of the trunk, and John Silverman, who was the equipment man, walked over to him and said, "Joe, you're on the DL. You're not going to California. Put your bag back in the trunk and go home." And that was his that was his reward, or it was Buck Rogers' revenge for him not being available, making himself not available in the 21st inning when he was the last relief pitcher available to the Expos. And the other part of that story is that John Wetland pitched for the Dodgers, pitched the final 6 innings for the Dodgers, shut out, 5 hits, was the winner. And the Expos then traded for John Wetland in the offseason because of that performance. So my point is maybe the Jays should reach out for Will Klein this winter, who pitched the last 4 innings for the Dodgers in this brilliant game, in this memorable game that we're all going to never forget. So that's my opinion on what happened in Game 3. And let's see if they can turn it around in Game 4. I think that if they do the strategy of Bieber followed by Bassett, that they can do it. And so this is it for my summary of Game 3. Go Jays in Game 4. And Mal and I will be at you at the end of the series with a regular edition of Exit Philosophy. Thanks.